Great. So I think we're ready to make a start. Welcome, everyone. My name is Ekaterina Clark, and I am based in the MBA Marketing Recruitment team here in Manchester, UK. So I'm part of a wider team responsible for the recruitment of students onto our array of MBA programs. Thank you very much for joining us for this online event today. We are very fortunate to be joined by some of our students and alumni, as well as the head of MBA Marketing Recruitment, Chris Healy. And really the purpose of this session is to give you all almost a real life perspective on what's it like to study on one of our professional MBA programs, what it's like to combine a full-time role with the demands of MBA study. So it's a very interactive session. You have been muted, but that is simply to minimize background noise, and we do encourage questions throughout. So please do use the Q&A area for any questions and comments throughout the session. And what will happen is that Chris will try and incorporate those into any questions that he will be directing at the panel. We'll also be staying behind after the main presentation to answer any admissions related questions. So do hang around if you want to speak to Chris or I directly. And we'll also be recording the session. So if you do have to leave halfway through, don't worry, I will be sharing the recording of the full event with you this week. Over to you, Chris.
Great. Thank you very much, Ekaterina. Good morning and good afternoon to all of you joining. I see we've got some people from North America, South America, Africa, Europe, and of course the UK joining us today. So thank you very much for your participation. A quick introduction to myself. My name is Chris Healy. I'm responsible for recruitment and marketing across our suite of MBA programs. So that includes, of course, our full-time MBA, our global executive MBA, our partnership MBAs, and also the Manchester Global MBA, which is the biggest MBA program at Alliance Manchester Business School. Delighted today to be joined by one current student and two of our alumni from the Global MBA. We like to hold these sessions because rather than listening to Ekaterina and myself just speak about the MBA for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, we think there's a lot of value to be had from hearing firsthand from people who have had to have the same thoughts as you know, whether to undertake an MBA, where to undertake the MBA, and the experiences that they've had on it. So I think you'll gain a lot of useful insight over the next 30 to 45 minutes. But before we get started, I'm going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves. I'm going to do it in order of how I'm seeing you on the screen. So I'm seeing Barak, Mariella, and Robert in that order. So over to you first, please, Barak.
Thank you, Chris, and greetings to all from the beautiful city of Cape Town. I am Barak Surf. I work in the higher education management sector for a company called QS, which many of you might know for the university and business school rankings that they publish. I've had various roles within the company, but am now currently consulting internally, transforming B2B product offerings and executing thought leadership events globally. Thank you.
I guess that's on me. Hi. Hi, everybody. My name is Mariella. I am Peruvian and Italian, but I'm living in Switzerland, in Zurich, and I'm an HR transformation manager. I'm the current student, so I started my MBA, my global MBA in July 2022, and I'm very excited to be here.
Thanks. And then I guess finally me, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Robert Stammers. I graduated from the Global MBA in, I hate to say it, but 2016. Time seems to have disappeared very quickly since I graduated. I currently work as part of the senior management team at PricewaterhouseCoopers, working in business and technology transformation. And before joining PwC, I progressed a career with Accenture, predominantly delivering technology change, where I was for 11 years. And managed to balance a very busy career that was continuing to progress while studying. So hopefully I can share some of my experiences around that on the call today. Chris, I'll hand back to you.
Cheers. Thank you very much, everyone, for that, for those brief instructions. And a good way to get started, and we'll stick with you, Robert, just because it's been a few years since you've graduated. But thinking back to before you started your MBA, what did you? Because I'm a believer. Not everyone actually needs an MBA, but the MBA is hugely beneficial to many individuals. Why did you decide on an MBA? And I'm not asking you to talk about Alliance Manchester Business School or our MBA program now. I'm just genuinely interested the idea of an MBA. Why did you think that you needed one?
Sure. So the MBA is something that I decided quite early on was something that I would eventually do. And I guess it's probably a bit like starting a family, if I'm quite honest with you. There's actually never a good time to do it because people have busy lives, and somehow you need to find additional time to cater for this sort of study. So it's always been a personal goal of mine. I actually have a sibling, not to suggest that I'm competitive in any way, but he did the Manchester MBA when it was previously the executive MBA at Manchester. So I was able to take some learnings from him as well. But the real driver for me, Chris, for doing it was twofold, really. One is when you work in such a fast-moving, competitive type of career, how can you really differentiate yourselves from the peers that are equally wanting to progress within the firm? And, for me, you can be good at, I think about my line of service, I can be good at stakeholder management, I can be good at selling work, I can be good at delivering value to my clients. But in such a competitive environment that I work in, that just isn't enough. That's kind of the expectation. So I started to think about what is it that I can do outside of my immediate work environment that can give me that competitive edge. So there was obviously a competitive side to it in terms of being able to progress within the firm. But the other thing for me is that it allowed me to completely change the direction of my career. So as I touched on in my introduction, when I worked with Accenture, I was very much a hands-on delivery person. So helping technology solve complex problems and basically implementing the technology to do that as part of big transformation programs. What I've been able to do since I graduated with my MBA is take a slightly change of direction in my career. So I guess the only way I can really describe that is that I provide a lot more management consulting style of work now. So I've almost used the MBA to step up the value chain and start to deliver things like working with my clients to actually help them define what their IT strategy looks like rather than what it is that they need to deliver. I could talk about this question quite open-ended, so I'll pause.
I think that's a great answer, because you've touched on a number of things that people should be considering when they're looking at potentially enrolling on an MBA program. You're talking about career progression, something to give you a competitive edge. You were also someone who obviously sounded like you wanted to change, not necessarily change full career, but change function or direction slightly. And of course, one of the things that the MBA does give people is that confidence to be more involved in perhaps the strategic direction of an organization. So I think that was a great answer, Robert. So thank you very much. I'm going to move over now to Barak and Mariella, because and we'll focus a little bit on the Manchester MBA. Barak, you're in Cape Town. Mariella, you're in Zurich. You've got the opportunity to choose to study an MBA literally from anywhere in the world. Whether it's a school in the UK, whether it's a school in Africa, whether it's a school in mainland Europe, whether it's a school in North America, those options were very much on the table for you. So I'm just interested, why, as two international candidates, did you choose to go for the Manchester MBA? And we'll start with you, please, Barak.
Thank you. So to give a bit of background, in a previous role as the head of marketing for EMEA in Australia, We used to organize student recruitment events. The company still does. And for students to meet MBA schools and learn more about the MBA programs. Over the years, I advised thousands of students on the MBA and let them, let them see what the benefits were of doing an MBA. One of the things that we had that I've always given advice that I've always given is how to choose the right MBA program for yourself. So I took some of that advice that I had been given and sort of it helped me narrow my list to make my shortlist of schools. And so for me personally, I knew I wanted a UK-based school because of my connections to the UK. I wanted an internationally recognized school, one with triple accreditation, and that one that was top ranked. So apart from that, I then had my shortlist and then researched all the schools and potential programs. What I eventually did to arrive at Manchester MBA was I researched the program, and what attracted me to Manchester was the history of the university, the clearly defined application process, the Manchester method that they talk about, which is the practice-based learning, the way students are assessed, and lastly, it was the variety of electives that you could do as part of the MBA program. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much there, Barak. Mariella, I think I might expand on that question because I'm sure Barak gave a number of different number of different points there, which I'm sure you also would have covered. So I'm just thinking about let's say the structure of our MBA program. So we've always prided ourselves on offering the exact same MBA to all of our students, whether they study our full-time MBA or part-time, they receive the exact same qualification. And of course, in order for us to do that, we need to ensure that our program has got the same quality standard as our full-time program. And one of the ways that we've done that is to ensure that the program has some face-to-face contact, because there's a number of options now to just do 100% fully online MBAs, and that works very well for a number of people. So I'm just interested again into this, why the Manchester MBA, but maybe with a slightly different spin for you, Mariella. How important was the face-to-face element for you when selecting the MBA?
It was indeed very important. I wanted to have that, I wanted to still be able to work. So that's why I wanted to do a part-time MBA, but I didn't want to do a fully remote MBA because I wanted to network and meet new people and from all around the world. So this was the perfect mix because I could still travel and meet them. And we have workshops twice, 3 times a year. I've done 2 so far. I started in July, so I went in July and then I went in September, and the next one is in March. And it is just an incredible way of meeting people from all backgrounds, all over the world, and also to work together. I think that just sitting in the same room, working together on the same thing for 4 or 5 days straight really makes a difference. We had one occasion where we had a mostly online project to deliver as a group, and we really felt the difference, and we craved that on spot, just close the door and work together until come to a solution. So I think it has been incredibly important for my learning and development, but also to really bond with my fellow students, fellow cohort members. I became also the student representative, so I'm on top. I'm also not only we're going to the lessons, but we're having WhatsApp chats. We are organizing night outs. We are always making sure that we have at least one night with everybody, even if we are divided into two different times, that everybody is in town and we can go out and talk and discuss. We're organizing our first trip, so we're going to Dublin all together before the March sessions. So, and we're really tracking who's doing which elective because we want to be together. So for me, it is absolutely fundamental. I will always recommend have that opportunity to be with your fellow students. Yes.
Excellent. I actually heard about that Dublin trip on Friday nights when I was
Oh no.
Marwan in Toronto told me over.
Oh yeah,
over
Marwan is
beer.
absolutely. Marwan is one of my best friends from the MBA, and yes, we're going together.
Excellent. So, I think to the audience, Mariella gave you, I think, some valuable insight there as to why she wanted some face-to-face element as opposed to fully online. I'm going to head over to you now, Robert. So 29 days face-to-face contact is what is regularly on our global MBA. Now, anyone could choose to do what I would class as maybe a traditional part-time MBA or a traditional executive MBA. Now that would mean maybe 70, maybe 80 days face-to-face contact over a 18-month, maybe 24-month period. How do you think that balance worked out for you, both professionally and personally?
So that's a great question. And the only, when I think back to the first question you asked me about why the MBA, the final kind of bullet point that I would have said was building your network, and kind of building on what Mariella said is that it's easier to form stronger, longer lasting relationships when you've got that face-to-face contact. So I was never interested in doing an MBA that was fully remote. I think in terms of your question around, how did it work for me personally, I already had and have a challenging career. So one of the things that attracted me to the Manchester MBA was very much the way that the workshops were packaged together. So I think, quite often they'd start, I can't remember off the top of my head, but you'd almost be on campus doing a full week of studying. And it was quite high pressured because there's a lot of things happening. There's a lot of content to get through. I think about the whole Manchester method, which is one of the things that Manchester differentiates itself on, which is all to do with learning by doing. So you're almost doing it in a typical working style environment when you're on campus over that week to 10 days. But it worked quite well because of the way that it was packaged up. And I think it was almost, off the top of my head, I think it was like, a series of 2 modules for the workshops each year. But very fast paced. It allowed me to manage my expectations at work because I knew that I was going to be offline genuinely for the full period because there wouldn't be time to be checking my work emails. It just would have been a lot busier and a lot harder to accommodate the sort of number of days that you were talking about, Chris, because, I think about my work calendar and meetings that I need to join. It's very difficult to be half online and half offline. It's best just to clear the decks and just set people's expectations that you're going to be offline. And then in that way, you're able to give full dedication to the project at the university, the MBA at the university, learning the content, putting it into practice and building relationships.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. And then, to the audience, I think what you've got there are 2 different perspectives as to why the Manchester Global MBA worked for both Mariella and Robert, and why they would choose to have our program over something that was fully online. And as Robert mentioned there, doing an MBA with 60, 70 days face-to-face contact, yes, obviously there's some attraction to that, but how practical is it? So these are the things that everyone should be considering. Barak and Robert both mentioned our Manchester method over the last couple of minutes. So Barak, I'm going to go to you on this. So the Manchester method in very short, briefly, is basically a practice-based approach to teaching and learning, meaning we want our students to apply what they learn in the classroom into their jobs. Barak, do you think this is true? Were you able to do that? Apply the knowledge from the MBA into your workplace? If so, could you share an example with the audience, please?
Yes, it is true. For many of the individual and group projects, you need to use real life examples. And this allows you the opportunity to research and analyze your own organization and its people. And then you can apply those methods that you learn in the classroom. So since the how it's changed the way I did things since the start of my MBA, I stopped doing what I thought was best and instead reflected on the relevant theory and what we had learned in the classroom and what is in the textbooks, and used those use the combination of those things to assess what would be the best approach if I were to implement, a new marketing strategy, for instance, or develop a new product. So definitely you can use it in real life.
Excellent, thanks. So I guess what we're trying to get across there is the practical nature of the Manchester MBA. And I think it's something important for everyone when they're looking at MBA programs to find perhaps a program that does offer that practicality. Mary, I'm going to ask Mariella and Robert this question on workshops. So one of the things that we recently did, because of our global presence with our campuses in Dubai, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Shanghai, is we would pay for students' accommodation if they attend overseas classes. So, Robert, firstly, with you, did you go overseas? Did you attend any classes at any of our global campuses?
I'm afraid I didn't. So that's quite a straightforward response from me. And the only reason why, let me just provide some clarification around that, is really it wasn't the right time for me. Like, we were just about to start a family and stuff, so it didn't seem quite fair for me going off to Dubai. But I do know a lot of people from the UK who were part of my cohort that did it, and the feedback was very strong. It helped build that network further. The whole point of the global presence is the global footprint, right? And trying to take advantage of that and build your network out as much as possible as you can. I know a lot of people that spent time in the Dubai area, but yeah. I guess just to finally add to that is probably something that I didn't take advantage of and I should have. So I know people that actually went and studied modules in Dubai, and later, actually, because of that and opportunities they got introduced to, actually join companies like McKinsey in Dubai, covering the Middle East. So whilst I don't have any direct experience of myself, that's not me being an advocate in any way. I think if you get the opportunity, you should absolutely look at doing it.
No, I think, you know what, that's the thing, when you're asking these questions, unless you rehearse this, which we didn't, you can come across those sorts of answers. But I think it's a great point, because we consistently say our MBA can be as global or as local as someone wants it to be. So someone who can live in the UK can take all their classes in Manchester. Someone living in New York can take all their classes in Manchester. But equally, someone who's living in Nigeria, someone who's living in LA, they want to take some classes in Manchester, some in Dubai, some in Singapore, then that option is there. So this is not something that we dictate as a business school. It's something we'll encourage, and it is up to the individuals. So of course, Mariella, you've only recently started your program. So is it something that you're considering? Did you give any consideration to it even pre-MBA?
Oh, absolutely. I have a plan. We all have a plan. I didn't consider it before the MBA, but I for sure started considering once I started, especially after the September workshops. We started thinking about which electives we would like to try, since some of them are only happening in July and some of them are only happening in January. Sometimes the location is different. So we're thinking when to do what. According to the locations we want to visit. For example, I know that I want to be in Singapore for sure. I also would like to be in Dubai, but I also want to do courses that match, the path I want to continue going forward on. So that is what I'm doing. I have downloaded the list of all the electives. I know when each of them are happening. I have highlighted the ones that are in my final list. I have too many. I have too many electives and then not as much electives I can do. So I also have to bring that down. But yes, we definitely considering that according to course and location. And again, also considering what my other friends from the MBA are doing, so we can create bonds with other people, but still create stronger bonds among us.
Yeah, excellent. Barak, you mentioned in your why the Manchester MBA question, you touched on electives, and I'm just wondering, how did you select your electives, and what advice can you offer to the audience, and I guess also Mariella here, because she's still thinking of hers. So yeah, what advice can you offer?
Yeah. So when it came to electives, like choosing a business school, it was a tough choice because Manchester has many electives and they all look great. What I did in choosing them was I sort of eliminated those areas that I'm already familiar with. So for instance, I'm a marketer, so anything to do with marketing, removed that from the list and arrived at a short list. And then obviously using these electives as an opportunity to learn something new, I then found myself on a journey. And I call it a journey because the 3 electives I eventually selected all fitted very well together and complemented each other. And they took me out of my comfort zone. So not only did I learn something new, but I challenged myself at the same time.
Yeah, excellent. I completely agree with your methodology there. You come from a marketing background, so you decided to scrap those. I remember just before COVID bumping into one of our current students. He was an entrepreneur, very, very successful entrepreneur, and bumped into him and asked, just making small talk, and I said, well, how's your course going? And he goes, well, I'm not particularly enjoying this particular course. I said, well, what is it that you're doing? And he goes, I'm taking the entrepreneurship course. Now, this was a person who had 20 years of successfully growing his own organizations, and basically he found it too easy. But Barak would have found a similar case. So I'm also a big believer. I think that you should look at the MBA as an opportunity to learn new skills whilst you're on the program. And then Mariella, I heard you say there about it's difficult just to pick 3, and
Yes.
I hope Robert's not going to be too displeased here when I say one of the new initiatives that we've launched recently in terms of lifelong learning is to invite our recent graduates back to take a free elective, because we do know it is quite difficult to select just only 3. So hopefully that'll be an extra one there for you, Mariella.
Thank you.
Robert, we've spoken about the workshops there, the Manchester method. Of course, one other part of the program is the live company project, live business project. What did you pick a specific company? Was it a company you were with? Was it one of your group members' companies? Can you give the audience an insight in terms of how everything worked regards to your business project, please?
Yeah, sure. So the business project is interesting, and if you've seen the timetable of the program for those people on the call, that's kind of the final challenge of the MBA program. It's done right at the end, and I guess from my own experience, I was able to do a project that was with people from the same cohort who were in a similar position to me. They were based in the UK. They had similar high pressure jobs, and because we'd done many of the modules together, we knew how each other worked. We knew what our working styles were, and we had already had that relationship. And we actually chose and did our project on a live company problem. So we worked with one of the high street banks with some head offices in Manchester to basically help advise and help them define their digital first strategy, which was all around basically removing your high street presence and push everything to your digital channels, whether that be online banking or through your telephone banking kind of thing. I have friends on the program who did something different, which I think is worth sharing, because it just gives people a bit of an open mind about the opportunities. You can either do it on a live project, or you can do it much more down what I would classify as the traditional academic route, where you spend a lot of time in the library doing research. When you do a live project, of course, you have to do research, because you have to do your chapter of your report is all around research, and that has to feed into the project. But you can also do more of a purely academic style project. And I had a group of friends who I'm still in touch with now, who actually did something at the forefront that would allow them to mobilize an organization together. So they're actually still operating a company. They're leads of the company and have seen it grown over the years. So I think, when it comes to your final project, think about what your end goal is. I was working in UK retail banking at the time, so the industry suited me. There was someone who worked at the company that we did the project on. It allowed me to share content. It allowed me to form a relationship between the organization, Accenture, that I worked for at the time, and the client. So I guess just if you go through the MBA program and it comes to the final project, just really think about, what is the opportunity here and what is it that you want to get out of it?
Excellent, thanks. And Barak, I generally don't know the answer here. So did you do your project with some of your colleagues from the same organization as you, or did you do it with group members from different companies?
No, so I did it with group members from different companies. We also selected our own group, people that we had all previously worked together with on various projects. So just to give context to everyone watching, I did my MBA through the pandemic. I started in January 2020. We had our first workshop in January, and then we were in lockdown. So for the rest of the 2 years, everything was online. Not what we hoped for, but we made the best of it. And actually the experience in itself was a valuable experience in all parts. So going back to the live business project, when we had formed the group and discussed ideas, like Robert says, you can use real life examples in this case, and so we were interested to see when we started the live business project. That was January 2021, and we were interested to see what the effects of the pandemic is going to cause on the workplace. Now, this is just before the Great Resignation came about. So we were pretty excited that we were on the bandwagon, and I'm also thinking along the lines of HR managers and CEOs wondering how the pandemic was going to affect the well-being and the expectations of employers on employees and vice versa. So it was truly a great experience to work on that project. We had to do research, and as time went on, we had to do more research, because halfway through the Live Business project, that's when the Great Resignation started happening, and then there was just an influx of research coming in from all different directions. But it was truly a great experience, and one that prospective students can look forward to.
Excellent, thank you. And we're getting some questions in here, so by all means, the audience, if you want to type some questions into the Q&A, by all means do. So there's one directed at Robert here. So how did you discuss with your employer that you wanted to do the MBA, and what support was available, cost and time-wise? Bear in mind you were working for a large financial services firm. So anything you'd like to add there, Robert?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Nick. I was trying to answer it, but I clearly don't know how to use the technology. So it's a good question, and my advice to you is don't be afraid of having the conversation with your employer. I think it was more normal for people to have had backing financially from their employer. When I think about the cohort that I was part of, I guess I was the exception because I wasn't quite lucky in that way. So I actually self-funded the MBA. However, what I was able to do was negotiate something different, which was protecting my annual leave and my employer giving me more time on their watch to do the study. So it didn't mean that I had to invest all of my time at the weekend doing group projects, doing assignments, keeping up with the reading. I was able to do it in work time. But I think it's a fair conversation for you to have. I don't think you should be put off by having the conversation. And if the answer that you get isn't the one that you want, think about what a negotiation position could be. And the only reason I think an employer is a little bit reluctant to financially back you is because it kind of opens up the gates a little bit. And if they give it to one person, is they're then setting a precedent that it's open to everybody. And my final advice is that before you have that conversation, really think about what is the business case for you doing it and for your company investing in you to do it. It's much better if you can go and have a conversation around what's in it for them as well as what's in it for you.
Yeah,
I hope that answers your question.
I think you answered that very well, and you've certainly touched on two key points there, which is time and funding. Interesting that you said you think your class, your cohort, were more concerned in terms of the funding aspect. It's interesting. We get sometimes up to 40% of the class are very fortunate to receive some sort of company funding. That's basically the max we get in the class, which means a minimum of 60% of our students choose to fund the MBA themselves, as Roberts did back in 2016, as I think you're doing at the moment, Mariella. But going back to the time thing, and just because you're very much in the midst of it now, Mariella, how are you managing to combine your professional life with your personal family life, etc.?
That is a good question. And by the way, connected to the previous question, I don't have the full support from my company. We have an education agreement, and but the best thing I have that maybe it's not part of the conversation at the beginning when you're thinking about what can I ask my employee, it's time. So I'm able to take all the time I need for my MBA to come to do the workshops, to do exams, which for me is incredibly useful. So yeah, I'm mostly funding it myself, but I have the flexibility from my company to take that time off, and they know that the knowledge that I acquire in that time off, that is not really off because I'm studying, it is also incredibly helpful for them. How I'm managing my time is a good question. Actually, my friend Bilal from the MBA and I started this podcast called Secret Diary of MBA Students, and we talk about this kind of things very often. For me, it's two things: is managing my time and having conversations with the people I love, clarifying boundaries. I realized that a lot of time, of course, was going to be taken for the MBA of my free time. I'm not able to wake up in the morning, so I usually work on the MBA in the evenings, and I could not see and do all the things I could, do before the MBA, because MBA had, of course, the priority. So I had conversations with my friends, my family, with my loved ones, to just clarify that I still wanted to see them, but I needed that basically Monday to Friday to dedicate to the MBA. And but I still reserve times in the weekends for me to decompress and see them and have fun. I usually block around 2 to 3 hours a day where I study, or I read the text, or I write assignments when the assignments are due. I know that I need to save more time and work longer hours when the assignments are out. For example, we have 2 assignments going out on the 24th of October, and the deadline is the 30th of November. So I know that from that time, I will have to cancel even more things. But again, I'm always trying to save time for myself, for my friends, to maintain that balance, because it's important also to take care of yourself and everything around you.
Excellent, thanks. Barak, I'm just interested in terms of the reaction you've had internally in your organisation to completing the MBA. Has there been, positive, even negative reaction to it? How do you think it's valued or perceived in your organisation?
Thank you. So I think initially many of my colleagues were surprised when I gave them the news about going on this journey of the MBA. But then they were all supportive and rooting for me till the finish line. I feel that colleagues, possibly in management, and even some people in my own network that didn't know me too well, now see me in a different light. There's something more to me than what they had just assumed. Yeah.
And Robert, I'm going to sort of stick to with that question to you, just because you work for huge global organization, but of course on the program, I'm sure you will have met students, friends who work at SMEs, work for not-for-profit types of organizations. So there'll be a real diverse range of students on the program. So I'm just wondering, the internal reaction you got to the MBA, and anything from your class that you might be able to share in terms of how you think the MBA has been valued for them.
So I think the way that it's been perceived internally is that, I mean, it's a great question. For me, where it's added the most value, if I'm completely honest, is more around people that have done an MBA as opposed to those that haven't. So it's amazing how you can use having done the MBA to build a relationship with people in your firm or people within your portfolio of clients, because they've been through it, they've lived through it, and they understand it. I think sometimes people can't fully appreciate the MBA and the level of effort that sits underneath it. That could be because they've not done it. It could be equally that they're a little bit curious by it and you've done something that they haven't. But for me, the real benefit has been speaking to people that understand what you've gone through and the level of effort that it takes, because it's not something that's easy. They aren't just given away. They cost a lot of investment, both financially and time-wise. And behind that, it brings a You know, we're all different, we all contribute, and we all have different values, etc. But it takes somebody with a particular type of personality and work ethos to successfully pass an MBA. And I just think that when you are able to share your experiences and have that type of conversation, it can just really help build the relationship. And it's also quite pleasing when somebody tells you that they have an MBA because they think that they're elite and that they've done something that puts them above, and you're able to turn around and keep a level playing field and say, that's interesting. I did mine at Manchester. Where did you do yours?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. You know, Robert, you're based in the UK, and I was at an event last night, and I was speaking to a number of professionals saying, you know, an MBA still gives you an edge in the UK, whereas in some international territories, US being a great example, everyone's got an MBA, so it's not unique. It's just a done thing. Whereas, of course, going back to some of the things that you said there, certainly not even everyone in such in large organizations that you've worked in have MBA, so it does set you apart. So that just, I guess, re-emphasizes that point, how in the UK it still gives you that opportunity to stand out from the crowd, if you will. So I'm going to give the final question to you, Mariella, and to the audience. I see there's a couple of other questions there, which myself and Ekaterina will answer momentarily. But Mariella, any final piece of advice that you'd like to offer the live audience, and then the audience that will be watching us offline, because they are in a position that you were fairly recently in yourself, that, you know, they're weighing up their options, maybe whether to do an MBA, whether to do the MBA at Manchester, you know, how it's going to, how the program is going to be for them when they're enrolled, etc. So however you want to answer it, but any final pieces of advice to the audience, please.
Oh, the pressure is on. I'll try my best. So I think the advice is, to quote a famous brand, just do it. I've been thinking about doing an MBA for a few years. It was always something, oh, I have to wait for that promotion, or I have to wait to move to that particular. It's, in the end, there's always going to be something else. But if you really want to do it, if it's on your mind for a while, you feel like it can contribute a lot to your career, to yourself, to your development also as a person, because it's not only about the knowledge you acquired, but how you develop and the network that you also develop, which it's not only for professional goals, it's actually what the things that they teach you and how you work together. So go through the requirements, do a task list of all the things that you have to do. Not being from the UK, I had the extra steps of the immigrant steps, as I call them. So the English test, for example, those translations if needed. Write a step-by-step of all the things that you need to do to cover each of them. And then every month, just do something. And worst case scenario, if there's something urgent that happens and you cannot start this cohort, you can always do it on the next, but feel like you're going towards your goal slowly and that you have an end goal in mind.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And Mariella has actually just recently done a podcast in terms of MBA applications, so we'll make sure that we send you a link to that when Ekaterina follows up with you over before the end of the week. So Barak, Mariella, Robert, thank you all very much for participating in today's panel. I think you've all given some excellent advice to the listeners, and that will help them as they consider their MBA journeys. So thank you very much. And to the audience, again, I see there's some questions here. Ekaterina and myself will answer them because they're going to be more personalized questions. So Barak, Robert, Mariella, thank you very much. You are all free to leave.
Thank you.
Thank you.